Alrighty.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. As promised in the daily financial news this morning, July 25th, having one of my students on, we're going to talk about 1031 exchange, talk about other questions he has, and I'm going to ask him about the course in the Facebook group. But before we get started, let's welcome Joey to the show. How you doing, Joey?
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well. So you're on the East Coast, I hear?
Yes, Tampa, Florida.
All right. Tell us a
Very
little
hot.
bit. Very hot. So what does very hot mean?
Well, 90s,
And
low
humid, right?
90s, and
And
super humid. Yeah, that might be the difference from,
yeah,
us to California.
yeah,
I'm not sure how humid it is.
oh, yeah, we don't have humidity, at least in the Bay Area. Yeah.
Mm.
I think maybe we have 2 humid days a year, and most people would laugh when I say that. But yeah, that's the one thing I was never comfortable with, right? As a sales guy, I traveled all over the world, but when I got to a humid spot, I was uncomfortable. I'm just not used to that.
Yeah, I was born here, so I've been here my whole life, but you really don't get used to it. I mean,
Okay, well, that's good to know.
so, yeah, but at least we have Tom Brady now, so we don't complain about things like that. So
Yeah, you
yeah,
are Super Bowl champs, so
that's right.
congratulations. Hey, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your real estate experience, maybe before the course, why you got the course, and then we'll jump into your 1031 and other questions. Just let everybody know who is Joey.
Yes. So first off, when I graduated USF, I got a pretty decent job around 25 maybe years old. I got the job in software QA,
Okay.
and I lived with my parents for 1 year and saved, so I was able to do some good things financially. Like, I have no car payments. I have no student loan debt.
Nice.
I put a nice down payment on the place where I'm living right now, so it's a nice place, and the mortgage is cheap, pretty well, like relatively cheap. And
Cool.
so my expenses are really low, but always on my mind was, what am I going to do for the future? Because I have a little bit of fear of, like, inflation and
Yeah.
this government spending so much money. I'm like, man, are things going to be so expensive that I'm going to be able to retire, like, and have the cash?
And forgive me, well, I'm going to just wild guess here, 28, 29.
I'm glad you think so, but I'm now 30. I just turned 31.
All right, 31. So just so you know, my daughter's 30. So just put
Okay.
that in context.
Oh, nice.
There you go. All right. So I digress. So you're 31. Okay. So you
Yeah.
have this
So
fear. That's good. I like
yeah,
it.
and so the thought of what am I going to do financially, what am I going to invest in, has always been in my mind. So I started with stocks, and I thought I was, like, the smartest kid around at the time because I did extremely well. And I at one point had 100K in my my brokerage account,
Sure.
and I was trying to think more and plan. So I was moving things around, and I said, and it was in mining stocks back in like 2015. I bought them when they were real low, and they jumped to really
Mhm.
high in 2016. So I thought I was outsmarting people, but really I didn't really know what I was doing. So I thought a move was going to happen where all my stocks were going to be lower just temporarily, based off some news that I forget what it was now, something that the Fed Reserve said. So I sold everything, and it actually went up the next day. And I was like, oh my God, now let me get back in. And so I took a haircut on the money, but that was where I learned, or later it was where I learned about capital gains tax, because everything, even though I sold
Yeah.
and kind of took a loss because I bought back in,
Yeah.
it's now on the books for realized
Oh
gains.
yeah. It's an
And
activity. Yeah.
this was in the short term. So
Income.
it's brutal, because then you get this big bill. My age, maybe I should have known, but I thought I was smart, was kind of stupid. So I get this gigantic bill, and I'm like, look, how am I supposed to pay this bill? So I had to sell some more stocks to pay that caused another it was just a mess. I mean, at the end of the day, I did very well
Yeah.
for my age at the time, but I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't even want to go. I got penalized for doing good.
Yeah.
So I was like, what else can I do? And I was kind of just trying to look around, and a thought crossed my mind when I had now I took everything out of the stocks and had it in just a bank account. And I'm like, around my university and where I was working were some student houses, or not student, they were basically apartments,
Mhm.
but students would live there.
Sure.
And I saw the price. I'm like, man, I could put a down payment on one of those and rent it out, like in student. So it got me that in the world of, do people do this? And that's where I found all the info, bigger pockets, YouTube videos, and I'm like, oh, well, this is a thing that people do, and it's very successful for a lot of people, and a lot of people who aren't necessarily wealthy. They're just average guys that
Mhm.
did the work and over time. So I eventually I learned to not go into the student house. I mean, some people do, but I found some risks there. I started learning, and that's eventually where I came across you in an interview. I think it was with Morris, an interview um, at the time. But I loved the message because it was one rental at a time. You don't need to go any fast or do everything at once. It's just save and really cut your expenses
Mhm.
so that someone like me who has a decent job but not a six-figure job can just save money, put it into one at a time, and that's basically how I got involved in it and where I found you and started following you. And you were at 2,000 followers on YouTube. Now
Oh,
you're at
wow.
20,000. So
Wow. You've been around a long time. You're an OG.
yeah, I guess so.
Well, thank you for the support. That is awesome. Yeah. Yeah. 2000 probably was like 18 months ago, I would guess. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah. It's fun. I like doing this. So thank you for following in the support. So sounds like when did you buy your first rental?
A couple of years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody likes to hear about the first one. What'd you buy?
Well, the first one, so I can't do it locally, really. I mean, I might have been able to back a couple of years ago, but not really. It was too expensive, so I had to go out of state. And I know following you, you weren't huge about doing it out of state, but really do your homework if you are. Go visit the place if you
Yeah.
are. Make sure you find connections you trust. So it took a long time. I didn't jump in, but eventually I went in, and the market was Memphis
Okay.
because so the one plus about doing out of state is you can sort of narrow down a little bit and search for a better yield for
Mm-hmm.
cash on cash.
Mm-hmm.
You have
Yeah.
that advantage, but your risks are going to be you don't have as much control maybe, or you have to put more trust than you otherwise would have, if you're doing it locally and things. So I took my time and I made sure I trusted who I was kind of working with. And I went for a actually turnkey company
Okay.
in Memphis. And that was one of my questions for later, what you think about that kind of thing. But so I jumped in once I trusted the company. I bought my first place. It was just a 2 bedroom, 1 bath, but it was, has new roof, new, water heater, new,
Mhm.
everything,
What,
flooring.
what did a what did a 2-1 cost in Memphis? I have no idea.
It cost me at the time 67,000.
All right, 67. And remember what it was renting for when you bought it?
695.
All right, so basically the magic 1% rule, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
And very happy. I was very happy with it. And I still sort of am, but that is the one that I am probably going to maybe 1031 exchange.
Okay. All right.
And I could get into why
Yeah,
whenever
maybe
you
we'll get
want.
there in a minute. So let's bring everybody to date. So what do you have now, right? We're sitting here July of 2021. What do you have? And then we'll get into the 1031 question.
I'm under contract for the fourth.
Nice. The
And that was,
magic four.
yeah.
Oh,
We'll
that's
see how that
awesome.
feels.
Okay. All right. Did you stay in Memphis or did you go elsewhere or what's going on?
I did not. I went elsewhere.
All right.
And again, I was looking for where I could get good numbers,
Yep.
but also what I can do that I trust,
Yeah.
the people that are there and all that kind of thing. And a long time was spent making sure I know the area, the markets,
Mhm.
the cities and of where I'm going here. And that would be because of your influence. If I didn't follow you, I might have jumped into a place that
Yeah.
just had good numbers real
Yeah.
fast before really, So I made sure Michael Zuber would not want me to jump in unless I
Yeah.
really knew something.
You heard my voice in the back of your head.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah.
cool. So let me just tackle this topic because others may not have followed me that long. I think out of state investing can be awesome,
Hmm.
especially if you live in an expensive area, which I do, right?
Hmm.
And many people do. But unfortunately, the sexiness of good numbers sometimes mean a lot of people jump in. So
Hmm.
I purposefully over rotate
Hmm.
to be careful. It's bad news. Because if I don't shock people or make it memorable, they won't hear me when they just look at a good, oh my God, I could buy that for the cost of my car. I mean, how many times I've heard people say that freaks me out.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm not against out of state investing. I'm against out of state gambling, which if you don't do the work, you're gambling. And yeah, it might work, but trust me, I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of people that lost their ass buying a cheap house. So that's
Yeah,
just the deal. Yeah.
I think that I got a sense that that's what your thoughts were. And I think you did a good job because it did, help me make sure I didn't jump full in. And I made sure, I was really understanding what I was getting into and before I pulled the trigger, before I chose the second market. So it
Cool.
worked what you wanted to do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love to hear some things I try work. So that's cool. So again, you are a member of my course. You bought the course, How to Get Started One Rental at a Time. So thank you for that. You have a series of questions. So I'll turn the show over to you here and we'll see what they are. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, first maybe I could explain a little bit on why I'm 1031ing
Sure.
the possible Memphis one.
Yep.
The one was 67,000 and 695 rent, right? And what happened was eventually COVID happened and they lost their job, the tenant,
Mhm.
and then the eviction moratoriums happened. So I might have been riding that one out, and I wasn't receiving rent for that one, and it's very inconsistent. Now I got help. The tenant got a assistance from the city or some sort of thing, so that they were able to pay me. So the money came back, but it's month to month inconsistent. And part of me was thinking, man, a 695 rent. Imagine doing the credit checks on that, or like 3 times the income is not much income. One thing happens and they might not be able to pay rent. So my newer strategy was I'm not going to go for a house that rents that low just because
Mm.
it's such a risky tenant base. I said, unless though I'm going Section 8.
Mhm.
It was my thought, and that was my new strategy. So the two latest ones, 3 and 4, are both Section 8,
Mm.
or ones we're going to Section 8. Um, I wasn't sure if you would think that's a good idea. I think you do. I think you
Yeah.
like Section 8.
I love Section 8. Every property I own is available to Section 8 tenants. Everyone.
Okay.
Everyone? Yeah, everyone. Um, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think 35% of my income comes from Section 8. So yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah, so that was I think I saw a video where you said you would be approving of your students to try and get like just 5 Section 8s and see how it goes. There's a video where you said something
Well,
along
I
those
think I was
lines.
interviewing Matt, the lumberjack landlord. He's never done
Mm,
Section 8. And I think
okay.
that was the conversation. He's going to go get 5 Section 8 rentals and see what it's all about.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I generally don't put numbers on it, right? I don't say, hey, have
Mm,
5% or
yeah, okay.
20% of your portfolio here or there. I think being a Section 8 landlord, a good Section 8 landlord, is a good thing. Affordable housing is a good thing. I've had more problems with cash paying tenants than Section 8 tenants.
Right. A lot of
Um,
people have.
yeah, so you know, it's I believe Section 8 gets a bad rap from people that don't know it. That's what I think.
So that's what I'm going to be doing at least to start. I agree. Like I think if it's going to be a lower area, or maybe the tenant space going to be a little riskier, then I'm going to say, then let's make it open to Section 8 and hopefully try and find one there. So what I did with the first Memphis house is I got it we're listing it high
Mhm.
because we're trying to take advantage of how crazy the market is right now.
Of
And people are
course.
overpaying for crazy things and a lot of cash buyers paying. So I said, I'm not motivated to sell it, but if someone wants to overpay for it, I will.
I,
And I
I,
will let
I
them.
feel the same. I let people overpay all the time. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the potential 1031 comes into play for
Okay.
me here. Um, one question I had for you was, I believe you don't like buying a place that has tenants already in it. Is
Well,
that correct?
so I got to answer this two different ways. Historically speaking, no problem. I do it all the time.
Okay.
The last year, I want a discount for that because
Okay.
I don't believe the seller. The sellers always say the tenant's paying, the tenant never missed a payment, blah, blah, blah,
Mm,
blah, blah. I don't
mm,
believe them. I think all sellers are liars. So I
mm.
want a discount for taking over a property. Now, in 8 days or 6 days or whatever it is, the CDC thing's going to go away. So that becomes less of an issue. I think California is still out a couple of months, but that becomes less of an issue going forward. So most times of my career, and hopefully most times in the future, it doesn't bother me. But the
Okay.
last year it has.
Well, part of my part B to that was, do you see it a little better if they are Section 8 tenants? Because in this case,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the Section 8 nears, again, I don't know every state. I can only talk to my state. Hasn't missed a payment, hasn't been late. no issues. But realize that Section 8 tenants, they pay what's called their 40%. So you have to figure out how much is the tenant's responsibility and how much comes from the government. Because I've had Section 8 tenants owe as little as zero. It does happen. But I've had other tenants that owe half the rent. So you gotta watch what the tenant's responsibility is.
Would they, since it's Section 8 and has yearly inspections, do you
Mhm.
find that it mitigates risk of damage to the, like, a total wrecking the house because you have someone
Yeah.
coming in and check?
So one of the reasons, so I consider myself an out of area investor. It's technically not out of state, but it's 2.5 hours away. Right. So I
Right.
love Section 8 because I get to check. I call it checking the checker. Right. I pay my property manager for yearly inspections. I pay them to make sure people aren't hurting my property. Now, 30 or 35% of my units get inspected every year by Section 8. I pay for it now, but I'm okay with that. So I like that. And in addition to that, you have to realize that Section 8 tenants want to stay in the program.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I get a report, well, not every time, but most of the times I get a report, there are tenant responsibilities, right? If the house is dirty, they will blame the tenant, right? Because they own, right? That's their domain. So yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah, I think generally speaking, a significant, if not a majority of the people in the program want to stay, and they're great. Most of the Section 8 tenants I have been in there years, and I'm very happy.
That was kind of my thought. And my third property did have the tenant already in it, and they are Section 8. And my thought was, I think that's better than if it was a cash paying tenant, for a couple of those reasons, that you mentioned. That was my thought anyway.
Yeah, again, an out of state investor, I love checking the checker. Yes, I pay my property manager. Yes, I have a great relationship. Yes, I know him personally. I could call him and yell at him, or if I had to, without issue, without ruining our friendship. But I like check the checker. I really do.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the answer. Well, another thing, I guess the reason why I was on here in the first place, the 1031 exchange, like I know what it is and, the tax advantage, but I'm like, how do I go about it? I already signed a listing agreement for that Memphis house, but I haven't talked to anybody about how do we go about the 1031.
Yeah. So I will give you my experience. Again, I'm not a professional. This is not legal advice, blah, blah, all those characteristics. I'm just going to tell you my experience with doing a dozen of them. I think I've done 12. I might have done 13. So it actually starts in the listing agreement. So what I had to do is I had to tell my agent who was listing it for me, because I didn't have a license, I want to list this, and my intention is to 1031. So in the listing agreement, I don't remember where it was, but there's something that says, does the seller plan to 1031? Right. It may be worded differently, but you have to declare in the listing agreement. That way, when the buyer sees it, when the buyer, right, once you get into contract, the buyer will have to acknowledge that you're 1031ing. So you need to go back to the listing agreement. If it's not there, have it added, because you got to disclose everything, right? So you're going to 1031 exchange. So it starts right there. Then what's going to happen, in my opinion, is, assuming you get in contract and you open escrow, you're going to, there'll be all the disclosures and all of that. You have to declare your intermediary, basically who's going to hold your funds. I have no idea who does that. So I leaned on my agent and property manager, or escrow company, to pick one. I didn't shop. I didn't compare fees. I didn't do any of that. I don't even know if there are different fees. For all I know, they're fixed. I don't bother looking to save a couple $100. So the transaction goes in. I'm already shopping for the next property, right? This is kind of in parallel, right? I got 30-day close for this one. I'm already starting to shop. My sale closes, right? The funds get put into this. I don't know if it's called an escrow account, but that's what I'll call it. Some other place where I can't touch it, because if I touch it, I get taxed, right? So it sits there. Then, as I remember, these are timelines. Everybody can Google and look it up. This is from memory. You have 45 days from the date of closing the first transaction to identify properties. Right? You can identify as many as you want, but you need to identify. Then you have a total of 180 days. So it's not 45 plus 180. It's 180 days to close a transaction. It needs to be like kind, meaning rental for rental. It needs to be bigger, right? You're selling 100, you need to buy 110, and you can't, I think they call it the boot, basically you can't get any money out, right? You use 98 and get $2,000 out. I think that's what it was called. So that's my memory. The process wasn't nearly as hard as it sounds. It is time constrained because you don't want to mess with the IRS. I would start shopping now so you can get a list of properties at least penciled in. But yeah, I think for you, I'd go back and look at your listing agreement in Memphis and make sure you've checked the box or whatever that says your intention as a seller is to 1031.
Okay, yeah, I can look at that and then we could probably modify it if
Oh yeah,
not.
you can, yeah.
One thing you said though is that you didn't actually go search for a third party 1031 account person.
Intermediary, I don't even know if you can. I'm no idea.
But at some point though, when you had to communicate with
Mhm.
where the people to say these are
Yeah.
my potential properties.
Yeah, no, yeah. So again, I was leaning on my agent and escrow
Okay.
company, right? Because escrow companies 1031 all the time. Really, we like to think about 1031s being these odd things, but there are 1031 transactions going on all the time. Your
Okay.
escrow company in Memphis will know about it. They will have worked with some. I just leaned on them and they asked me, which one do you want to use? I said, which one do you use most often?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I should have shopped and tried to save money, but that's not where my brain was at the time. And I've never gone back and looked at, did I pay an extra $100 or $500? I have no idea. No idea if I got taken advantage of or not.
Okay. Yeah. Extra couple hundred. Yeah.
My job was to bust my ass during the day and go find the next deal. I didn't have time to bury myself in fees, and maybe I should have, but I'm just telling you, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That will help me. I mean, I'll go and I'll try and get that modified and talk with them and see how it goes there.
Okay, you bought it for 63, 67?
67. So that's the thing is this is not a big 1031 exchange at all. It's,
Okay.
you
So
know,
what are you selling it for then?
I have it up for 80.
Okay. And then you probably put down 10, 20%?
Yeah. So I don't remember the exact numbers now, but I don't think I paid in total with closing and everything more than 18.
Okay.
You know,
So
might have been
you're
17, 18.
basically going to have about what, 25 grand to 1031, 20 grand?
Yes.
Okay.
About 25, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's see, I've done this before. So about 25. So okay, so let's just pretend you got that. You walk out. Let's just use round numbers. You got 25 grand sitting in some intermediary account. I'm sorry, you said you're selling for what? 89?
80.
Oh, 80. Okay, let's say you're so you got to go bigger. So what do you you have any thoughts on what you would go buy?
So that's the thing. So I have to go bigger than
80.
than 80. Okay, so I have to go bigger than 80. Yeah. Well, there are duplexes out there, but there's something about just I just think there's something more risky at the moment for me in a duplex where maybe more turnovers involved that I want to go single family.
Okay. Well, and just so
So
you know, I'm sorry to interrupt, Joey, but you can actually do 2 single families, just so you know. The total has to be bigger than 80, right? You could do
right,
a
okay.
45 and a 45, just for example. It doesn't have to be 1 for 1.
Okay. Yeah, well, 80 to 90 would be a perfect price range for
Cool.
me. Yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
that should work.
So let's just play it out. So you're selling for 80, you buy 90. What is 90 going to get you in your next market?
90 should get if 1100, 1000 or 1100. Yeah.
And less headaches, it sounds like, less risk.
Yes.
That's really what you're doing. So
that's the reason. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple of things I want to talk about that I don't talk about nearly enough. First and foremost, one of the things that I've come to appreciate only after looking at my last 20 years is I recycled capital really well. So, some of that means cash out refis, but some of them are 1031 exchanges, right? When people want to overpay, as you said earlier, I will let them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I talk about Norris Drive in my book. He clearly overpaid, right? And I moved it into an apartment building. Mm-hmm. So that again, if they want to do that, I will let them. But you've got to keep the money going forward, right? Reusing that capital really helps you explode growth. Because again, that one house became a 5-unit. That 5-unit is produced, hundreds of thousands of dollars I've used for other things. So just the ability to recycle capital is important. Not enough people realize that.
Yeah, I think I could use that capital to go less risky and higher yield. Now the difference, the trade-off is the one I'm in now, the one that I'm potentially selling is brand new everything though. So less capital expenses down the road. It's hard to factor that difference in.
Yeah, I mean, you're selling one asset, buying another. They're
Yeah.
going to have their pros and cons. The other thing that about a 1031 exchange going bigger, just so you know, is you just have to 1031 in. Let's just say, for example, you bought something at 90 and you put 40 grand down. I'm just using that for crazy math. So your loan to value is 50% roughly, right?
Mhm.
You could, after the fact, go back and do a cash out refi, right? The
Mhm.
1031 does not prevent you from getting equity out after. So
And I'm going to sound a little ignorant here, but on a cash out refi for investment properties, do they hit you with capital gains kind of tax there?
you
Really
do
none.
not pay capital gains on loans.
Yeah, I probably knew that at some point, but I had forgot it,
It's
and
okay.
that was something I wanted to ask.
Good.
That's a great tool. That's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cash out refis, no tax. You don't pay capital gains. Nope. It's a loan. There, you don't pay debt. You don't pay taxes on loans.
I hope it stays that way.
No, well, I cannot imagine it changing.
All right, good.
Yeah.
That's
Loans are
great.
not income, folks. Loans are not income. So, but yeah, never know. They got to pay for this
Mm,
crazy spending somehow, I guess.
mm.
Okay. All right. What other questions you got?
All right. Well, actually I kind of brought it up, the fact that I'm a little weary on duplexes versus single family, even though the hypothetical numbers sound great. I was wondering your thoughts. You might have talked about this before,
No, it's okay.
specifically in the context of a younger, newer investor starting their portfolio out.
Yeah. So I will give you my experience. I own them both, uh, but I believe in the numbers, right? So in my market today, single families are better. But if you listen to Dion and Matt, two of my experts, we do a conversation Thursdays. Both of them are buying duplexes through quads because they work better in their market. So I don't know what market you're going to, but what I would tell you is all duplexes aren't created equal. What do I mean by that? Some of my best properties are technically duplexes. However, they're configured as two different houses, right? They're not connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're separated by a little fence. Maybe it's a little 4-foot fence or something. But yeah, some of my best properties are two houses on one lot, which would be called a duplex. But so really, when you think of a duplex, are we talking about they have a shared wall? Is it a shared garage wall,
Yeah.
which is not a big deal? Or is it, a shared kitchen? Because the plumbing, that could be noisy. What I would tell you is my average turnover in a house is 8 years. My average turnover in a unit is just over 2 years. So you do have higher turnover. However, Section 8 tenants in duplexes don't turn over nearly as much because of Section 8 tenants in duplexes, they have it's when they move, they generally move to a house, right? But moving's expensive, right?
Yeah.
They got to pay for their own moving. So I don't know.
See, that's a good point you bring up, because that would be something I would consider for moving this capital, 25 grand plus some more, into possibly a duplex. Section 8 tenants, could be something I do. The thing is, the duplexes are a lot more cost up front. It's hard to find two vacant ones that are rent ready.
Oh
Usually you
yeah,
have to put some more
impossible.
cash in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much impossible.
Yeah, I would say in this market, again, I don't know what market you're in, but yeah, those are valid concerns, right? Because again, you pick over somebody else's units, you haven't qualified the tenants.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game, right? You're inheriting somebody else's problems or needs. Yeah, it's a lot. I like vacant properties. It's certainly the last year, vacant property is what I wanted. But if you wanted to sell me something tenant occupied, I was getting a discount.
Okay, I got you. And especially this last turmoil year, that makes a lot of sense. All right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Very cool.
I got one more for you, if I can.
Of course.
This one's kind of hard to. I wrote it down. It's kind of hard to say. Let me see if I could word it. Again, the context of a newer investor, maybe someone younger, maybe doesn't have a huge job, and they're trying to go one rental at a time. They save their cash up and they're ready to put it into a property. Is there a sort of rule of thumb or way to think about how much they should leave in their bank account as a security? You don't want to go and say, I have enough and I buy property, but I only have $1,000 left to my bank account, right? I'm
Yeah.
imagining this depends. Like in my situation, I'm pretty comfortable with my living expenses are pretty small. So I might be able to have less in that kind of,
Mhm.
security
Yeah.
account than others, but I don't know if you have a way
Yeah,
of.
certainly do. So generally speaking, I believe every person and then every landlord needs to have a reserve account set aside, right? So I don't know. I'm just going to use numbers. Let's say Joey has 12 grand in a savings account somewhere, and you're going to do this 1031. You're going to take 10 grand out, and once that closes, Joey's left with 2 grand. Right? You're left with 2 grand. That, and oh, by the way, you have 4 rentals now, and that's too skinny for me. Right. I believe everybody needs to have a reserve account over here, separate account, do not touch. It's only emergencies, right? What happens if you lost an AC or a roof leak or a water heater blew up or whatever, right? 2 grand's not nearly enough. So the first thing I would tell you to do is, Joey, you need to go get an emergency account just for whoopses, right? Surprises. And if you have 4 units that are, 5 grand would, 5, 6, 7 grand, you need to put that aside and never touch it unless you have one of those emergencies. So yeah, I do not. I mean, I remember sometimes I was looking for deals in 2010, 11. I'm like, ooh, I could get it, but I'd have to deplete my emergency fund. I'm like, nope,
Gotcha.
got to find something else. That's what
or just wait a little longer.
Or wait a little longer, right? Get creative. But yeah, thou shall not touch the emergency fund.
All right,
you'll touch it once every other year, but you're going to be really thankful it's there.
Yeah, and you did say in the scenario Joey's left with 2,000, that's too skinny, and you mentioned 4 properties. Now, if Joey had 1 property, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, even if you just had 1 rental house, I'd still want you to have 3, 4 grand. 2 grand's. I mean, that goes away with a fart in the wind.
Yes. Yeah, could be something wrong with your own car.
Yeah, exactly.
2 grand. Yeah.
It's not enough. You need to have a beefier. 5 grand, even if you just had 1, is kind of a number. You get to 4, 5, 10 units. That goes up a little bit. It doesn't go up. You don't add 5 grand for every house.
They're not all going to go bad. That'd be ridiculous. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking. And that's what I thought the answer should be. It's not a number you could really put on it, but 5 might be a solid number if you were to put one when you start out at 1. Yeah. And that's along the lines of what I'm doing. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. I don't think I'm going to be under that at any time.
Good. And but again, make sure you heard me or others heard me. I would seriously go open an account in a different bank.
Now, I have not done that yet, but that was on my mind after I got around 4, was to have things done in a separate bank account I don't have. So I'm almost there. I have it on my mind.
Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that's good for me.
Very cool. Well, since we're talking about the course in the Facebook group, would you recommend the course in Facebook group to others?
Oh, yes. I would recommend the book over it all.
Okay.
The Run Rental at a Time, the book, because it really helps to see your journey through it and the thoughts you have. And like I said, the message of 1 rental at a time itself is self-explanatory, but it's a very good one because it gets people like myself who were not made of money, but we're trying, and it's like, well, we can do this too. That's awesome. It gets you in a good mindset. The course, I did the course I'm not sure how long ago, but a while ago now, but it is very good to do the numbers. And like you say, the numbers are transferable. It's not something that it works anywhere you go. You could take that to a certain market and really try the numbers out there and do it there.
Yeah, that's a big deal for me. I'm just trying to teach a skill, right? Daily discipline and focus. Once you learn the skill, the skill's transferable, right? You can start in Memphis and then go to any other market.
Yeah.
But you got to take the time to learn the skill first. And then good news is you can use it the rest of your life. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So absolutely, I recommend it. Yeah.
Very cool, Joey. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for asking questions. I will get this uploaded today. You have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
You got it.
Appreciate it.
Bye.